Thanks for listening to the Guadalupe Radio Network podcasts. We've had a lot of requests to make our local shows available online, and we're happy to do so here on our website. This service, like everything else we do, is made possible only through the prayerful and financial support of people like you. So please, pray for us, and also please support us financially by clicking on the Donate Now link on the top left of our website. And thanks for your support of the Guadalupe Radio Network.
To you live from the Guadalupe Radio Network studios. It's A Good Habit with the Texas Nuns. Join us as we discuss anything and everything. And now, the Texas Nuns. And hello and welcome back to another, I always want to say another episode. It's not an episode.
I think
to another program. Yeah, sure it is.
It's an episode.
It's an episode of A Good Habit. Welcome to another episode of A Good Habit. And with you today, or with us today in the studio, well, I'm Sister Grace Marie, and I'm here, and with me is Sister Mary Peter.
Hello.
Sister Elizabeth
Hello.
Marie, and we have some special guests in the studio, besides El Dorito, who's at the board, of course. Should I tell now? I'll just let it be a surprise in a minute, who we've got in the studio. Right?
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's the
We
key.
had kind of a neat weekend, didn't we? Well, let's see. Was it last week? I got a phone call, and it was, I see a 205 number, and I know that's Birmingham, and I better answer this one. And I answer the phone, and there is Father Leonard on the other line. On the line. Not on the other line, on the line.
Like MFVA Father Leonard.
MFVA Father Leonard, Missionaries of the Eternal Word. And with him, Father Pascal, and he says, "Hey, sister, we're coming into San Antonio, and we're going to be here a month, and they're going to be taking Spanish." So anyway, it was really neat because they came and visited us, and they said Mass for us on Sunday. It's nice, wasn't it?
Yes.
But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it was a beautiful treat for us.
It was, because it was, of course, as everybody knows, it's Trinity Sunday. But for us, Trinity Sunday is, besides being such a neat and lovely, Sunday, it's also the day that we renew our vows. Traditionally, our community, I don't know if other communities do it actually, but we do. But we renew our vows, and even though we've all taken solemn, perpetual vows and everything, we just kind of renew them, like people do their marriage vows.
Yeah, as a communal devotional practice.
But I mean, it couldn't have been timed. The Lord timed it so perfectly, because they came into town, and they were, obviously they're going to be here some more Sundays, but that first Sunday they were in town, and so we had Father said Mass in our little chapel, and so we were able to renew our vows right there and then and there. It was very nice.
Well, there's nothing like being with family, It's like they're our family, and it was so nice to have them here.
Yes.
It's always refreshing to be with friars.
Yeah, there's something, then they're just wonderful. And they've been, let's see, Father Pascal was ordained last year, and then it's been 2 years of Father Leonard.
Yeah, so he's in his terrible twos, we tell him.
That's right, I forgot that. And then we got obviously the priestly blessing, because that first year, you get a special, I don't know what it is with that, but special graces from that first year blessing. So that was neat. So and hopefully we'll be seeing them a little bit more. I think they're pretty busy during the week.
Yeah, they said to tell you hi. Not you, Sister Grace Marie, but everyone.
Everybody. Everybody. I was going to say, well, I did talk to them, but from them to through us to all of you out listening out there. So they do such great work, the MFVAs, and we're just so blessed to have them.
Yeah, so maybe y'all could all pray for them as they study, that they would really have a gift of retaining everything, because I know that's the hardest thing about learning another language, is just retaining it.
I mean, crash course like that. Now they said they'd taken some Spanish, so I suppose it helps, but still, for a month, the crash course like that. I always used to be. I remember when when Mother had the radio in Rome for 2 years, and I know that MFVAs were over there taking courses, but what always astounded me was they would take philosophy courses in Italian. Well, for me, taking philosophy in English would be a challenge, but to actually take it in Italian, I thought was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they're doing the Spanish, and I think that's pretty remarkable too, because I don't know that I could learn a language in a month.
No. And yeah, actually, speaking of praying too, I think I couldn't actually find it just now, but read it this morning that the EWTN had their official ruling on June 17th, so that would be yesterday, and it did not fare well. So it looks like it's going to have to go to the next court, which would be in Atlanta. So keep praying for them, because you know they're a religious nonprofit organization who's being forced by the government to have to support all of these things that go against our Catholic faith. So keep them in your prayers for the financial support and for the support to keep going on, because I don't know how this is going to end. I know,
because they were one of the first ones to kind of
first lawsuit, the
lawsuit to just stand up to it all and say no. We're going to fight this. So now I know that the Little Sisters of the Poor, and I don't know how some of those others fared, but
well, I think it's all levels. I probably don't know enough about it right now to discuss it. All I do know is that the EWTN was in trouble yesterday, so we need to pray. It goes to the next thing.
Okay. Yeah. So if everybody out there could, really pray for that.
And it does affect all of us. It's not just like something like, oh no, bad news for them. They sort of are the first ones to have to go through all this, but it really will affect all of our the way we do everything.
Absolutely.
So keep that in your prayer for religious freedom.
Yeah. So that and I was going to say, besides the fathers coming in, on Friday night we went to see Father Martin. Is it Martin?
I'll let Elizabeth do that. Yeah.
Yes. What is that,
Martin Scott?
That sounds good.
Martin.
Or we could. There you go. You got a thumbs up.
I got a thumbs up from El Dorito.
which was very, very beautiful.
Oh, it was a beautiful parish. St. Monica's.
St. Monica's, lovely.
Lovely pastor. He was very kind, and we just had a wonderful mass. And
we made a whole night of it, didn't we? We went to confession. Well, we went to they had confession at 4:30, so we did that, and then of course there was mass, beautiful, and then the healing service, which was wonderful. And he's a holy man.
It was the feast of Saint Anthony.
It was. That's right. What a good way to celebrate.
It was a great way to celebrate. Yeah. And not only did we get all these special graces that night at the healing service and at Mass, but what did we have to go through to get there? We practically got killed in a high-speed car chase.
I forgot about that.
I was going to say that's so funny, but it wasn't at the time. But that was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were pulling off the exit. We don't really know where we're going, and we're far, and we're probably maybe a minute or two late. And so we pull off the exit, and there was they said a yellow light here, a caution light. So I was pulling through the caution light, and I always pray when I go under because I don't like to do that. But sometimes you just can't really stop. You're in that, I gotta go. So I went ahead and went, and Sister Elizabeth is always in the back thinking she's gonna get killed. So she screams, "I'm gonna get killed!" And when I looked over, she was right.
She really does say that.
She says it all the time. So I don't really.
I meant it this time.
So I don't really put a whole lot of stock into it.
The decibel level was a little higher. I could tell that that it was Well,
and then Sister Grace Marie, you always go, "Oh my gosh," of something, and I go, "Is it something?" I just drive. I always say, "Y'all look, I drive," and I said, "Is that something I need to know about?" And otherwise, I just keep my eyes on the road. So anyway, so we pulled through the caution light, and all of a sudden, I looked over because Elizabeth was screaming, and she was right. There was a car coming right at a white truck.
A white pickup truck was headed right at us.
Yes.
Full speed.
And I said, "Wow!" And I thought, well, it took me a second because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the one that ran the red light. Why? How could he be going full speed? So sure enough, he was coming on the shoulder. He'd passed all that traffic and was going into oncoming traffic.
And then he veered
onto the shoulder.
He veered into the shoulder of oncoming traffic.
Policemen started coming. One
squad cars all over the place.
I feel like I was in a bad Smokey and the Bandit episode.
Five cop cars were chasing him.
That's right.
So if you know any details, please contact me.
Yeah, we tried to find it on the news actually, but
I couldn't find anything. And I think then the Spurs kind of obliterated any other news that was going to.
That's true. Incidentally, I must say, congratulations. What a game.
What a game.
Go Spurs.
You guys are the best.
And we were praying for them, and we've not had really good fortune with praying for them in the past, but we risked it this time, and they actually did okay. And I didn't have to turn TV off or anything. So,
I know. I'm not a big sports person, but my goodness, what
I was so proud
nice
of them.
team.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Even when they did the announcement for those of you who do not live in San Antonio, as you know, the Spurs won. Yes. But they even when they're giving the MVP trophy out, all the other Spurs are just so genuinely happy for somebody else. They're so just other-centered, and
Well, and that's the thing about, I know some announcers say, oh, well, they're a boring team or whatever, but I'm one of
they call them boring?
Yeah, this one guy was on there saying that, which I was just, I thought that was not nice. But anyway, but the thing is that they play as a team. They're not, sort of divas. I mean, they... Can you have what's Mario, no, I guess a diva is a lady.
Is that an appropriate word for a...
Is it Devo if it's a man?
What is it for a man?
I have no clue. But yeah, some players have been called divas because they act like divas.
Yeah. But that whole thing of, when some could take a shot, they passed it to the next teammate. I mean, it's that, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think they're saying like some... I don't know these guys' names, but some of the players of other teams are saying like that was one of the greatest team effort ever that they've seen it.
Yeah, a lot of the Miami Heat, some of their players were saying that was the best team they ever played against. But this was a team that was on a mission. They lost to Miami last year.
Yep.
And they were on a mission, and this is what their goal was, and they did it as a team, and that's all they talk about. Is if you watch interviews with them, they play as a team. So yeah.
But still, you could even see the last quarter,
the
third quarter, where you could tell that the Heat wanted to win because they were going. When you get desperate and you're crazy and you just start throwing the ball away, and it seemed like that's what they were doing. So the Spurs seemed like more like. I know they wanted to win, obviously, but it seemed bigger than that for them. It was just great. It was a beautiful team effort. It was sort of like watching couples ice skating. It just worked well. We just lost half of our listeners.
I've never heard basketball compared to figure skating or something.
Although I did hear announcers saying it's almost like ballet, the way that they were moving that ball.
I've heard that one.
Was that you that said it? I thought it was an announcer.
Yeah, Sister Mary Peter's taking credit for that one. So, yeah.
Well, it was. I agree with you.
Okay,
you should be an announcer.
Is it time for a break?
Yeah, but before we go to break, I just wanted to thank everybody for last. We were at the Share-a-thon.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we were still in our time slot, but it was the Share-a-thon. But we just wanted to thank everybody for supporting GRN and getting out there and
keeping us on the air.
Keeping us on the air. That's right.
And you all helped us to meet our goal for our hour, so we got to ring the bells.
Yeah, because I love to ring those cowbells. There's just something about them,
It's fun.
So I tell you what, our mystery guest is going to be back with us in just a minute. And we're going to go for a quick break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Called to a life of silence, solitude, prayer, and penance, the hermits of the Mount Carmel Hermitage in Christoval, Texas, support their way of life through their kitchen, working many hours by prayerfully and humbly baking many different products to sell, which include jellies, fudge, bread loaf, biscotti, chocolate-covered nuts, and more. To order and help support their special way of life, simply log on to CarmeliteHermits.org and click on Online Store. May God abundantly bless you.
This is Dale Ahlquist with a Chesterton Minute. How many times have you heard someone say that they don't like the Catholic Church because it's so dogmatic? Well, G.K. Chesterton says you cannot live without dogmas. You cannot act for 24 hours without making a decision based on some deeply held belief that you cannot prove. Man can be defined as an animal that makes dogmas. Trees have no dogmas. Turnips are singularly broad-minded. In truth, there are only two kinds of people: those who accept dogmas and know it, and those who accept dogmas and don't know it. So when someone objects to the Catholic Church for being too dogmatic, it only means that they are dogmatic against it, even though they have no idea what their own dogmas are. Want more than a minute? Visit us at chesterton.org.
I'm looking for my bubble here. And we're back. And you are listening to A Good Habit with the Texas Nuns. And, well, I told you who was in the studio, but also, besides who I mentioned... You didn't? Well, I didn't. No, I mentioned us, but I didn't mention... Oh. Okay. So in the studio today is Dr. David Delaney. And you...
And the crowd goes
Yay!
wild. Yay!
And Trish, his wife. Hi, Trish. And welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here with you.
You're so
again.
brave to keep coming back to us too. But we're so happy to have you here. And well, Dr. Delaney is going to talk about the meaning of marriage and about an upcoming forum that's going to be going on next Wednesday, the 25th.
Right. Yes. We're having a marriage forum. Right now, I think that this is a very opportune time. I think for a variety of reasons. We have the Fortnight for Freedom that the Bishops' Conference has announced. There also tomorrow, I think it is. There are marches for marriage. Marriage, I think, more and more people are starting to recognize the importance of it, but not everybody. I would say that all too often, many of us are, so much influenced by the culture, the society, the media, and if we think about it, if somebody came up to us and asked us to define marriage, it would be very difficult nowadays. Mm-hmm. It's not anything new. I mean, this attack on marriage, it's really, I think that we can see the attack on marriage started with Adam and Eve, and it's continued since then. I think that G.K. Chesterton, we always make reference to him, that great convert to Catholicism of the early 19th or the early 20th century, I should say. Right at the turn of the century, he started writing a number of works about marriage, because in England, and especially in England, but in Europe, there was this liberalization occurring of divorce laws, this promotion of divorce, and he mentioned, at that time, an analogous problem to today. People really don't understand what marriage is. We can't define marriage. So we thought that it would be a good opportunity to develop or to put together a forum to really talk about this with regard to the main issue of today, the attempted redefinition of marriage. So we're having it on Wednesday night. It'll be here in San Antonio. It's at Our Lady of the Atonement Parish. It's off of Red Robin Road, up at the northwest corner of 1604. It'll be at 7 p.m. And our panel will be, there will actually be two of us on the panel. We were looking for a third. We weren't able to find one, but it'll be Michael Dunnigan.
Oh, he's great.
Esquire, yes.
Esquire.
He's a canon lawyer and a civil lawyer. And he's very clever, very witty, but he's also very smart, a brilliant gentleman. He will be presenting really the understanding of marriage from the perspective of the legal tradition, and then I will be looking at marriage from the perspective of Catholic theology and some philosophy smattered in. And so we're going to look at really the meaning of marriage, the questions that come up about marriage, what it really is, and in the context of so-called same-sex marriage. Right. There are a lot of the confusion, I think, arises from a desire to be compassionate, but also a lack of thinking about really what marriage is, how it fits into society. I think that in its importance for society.
Yeah, because, I mean, even the programming today, there are some quite well-known programs that are on the air now. That
like on TV?
TV that redefine what marriage is. I mean, and it's not just one, it's a few of them, really, and in films and everything else, but it really is quite confusing.
It is. It is. It's a marker, really. I mean, if we look at the media, I think the media shows us, in one sense, where we are as a society, but in another sense, it really does promote and push as well. If you think about it, I think that there was, I don't remember, time flies as you get older, right? But I think it was about 10 or 15 years ago, there was a talk show program, of a lady who, was a popular comedian, and she came out of the closet, so to speak, and she lost her show after that, because at that time, only 10 or 15 years ago, it still wasn't, sufficiently acceptable. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But look at where we've come in such a short amount of time.
That's the scary part, really, isn't it? That the short time that it's become so acceptable is pretty amazing, really.
And if you look at the question, with regard to marriage itself, look at how quickly that's changed. It was really, I mean, if we look at what happened up until the last election, it was acceptable to say that that marriage was just between a man and a woman. Mm-hmm. Leading up to the election, we all know what happened. The vice president, kind of pushed the envelope a little bit, and the president changed his opinion, and almost immediately, it now became a hateful position, a bigoted position to try to define what marriage was, what the real meaning of it is. So we are at a very critical point that could change so quickly.
But how is that? How is it that it has? That we've arrived at this kind of confusion. I mean,
that's a good question. I think that one of the reasons for it, I mean, there's a theological reason that we've arrived at the position that we have. It really is because of the real meaning of marriage, the importance of marriage for society, for the human person, and for the church, and really what marriage is. Marriage really, God in Himself, in a very real way, what His very being is in a certain way reflected within the human institution of marriage. We call it a human institution, but it has this divine origin. In many ways, marriage, the marital institution, the marital covenant, is perhaps, with regard to human beings as bodies and souls, body-soul unities, perhaps one of the most perfect manifestations of Trinitarian love. And so one can see how marriage then would be something that is going to be attacked by Satan. Not to sound too conspiratorial, I suppose, but we do tend to ignore the spiritual warfare aspect of what it is that we're facing. So, what we see now, then, and perhaps we can set aside a little bit the theological foundation for it, and we can pick it up again if we want to. But I think just historically, I had mentioned in the early 1900s, we start to see the liberalization of divorce laws. Mm-hmm. Within in Europe, and especially in England. What we also see occurring not too much after that. Interestingly enough, it also happens in England. There, the Lambeth Conference is the meeting. Yes. Right, it's a meeting of the bishops in the Anglican Communion, and we know that the Anglican Anglicanism really starts with the Church of England as it separates from Rome in the 16th century. The communion really refers to all of those that arise from that tradition that have spread throughout the world. In the United States, we call them Episcopalians. Anyway, every 10 years they meet. about in Lambeth in England. They call it the Lambeth Conference. And for a couple of, probably about, I think, 2 or 3, maybe it was 3 meetings of the Lambeth Conference before that, the issue of artificial contraception had arisen. Now, if you remember, at this time, artificial contraception really is something that is not it's not as easily practiced as it will be later.
Because that was in the 30s, right?
Exactly.
It was around in the 30s, that one.
Right. So really the one around 1900, 1910, 1920, I think each of those, they met and they discussed this topic, and everyone at the Lambeth Conference, the majority basically ruled out artificial contraception as illicit, following the Christian tradition. In fact, everybody, there were no really of any real note, no Christian groups, churches, if you will, that recognized the licitness of artificial contraception up until that time. But in 1930, the crack in the windshield started, really, and this is where finally they were able to get the Lambeth bishops got a majority vote, and really it was to promote the good of the marriage, to promote the good of the couple, that in some instances, after careful counseling, after a long prayer, there may be some occasions, they said, where it might be permissible. Well, it wasn't. Within 10 years, there were no limitations, and amazingly enough, it wasn't just the Anglican Communion, but just about every other Christian tradition followed suit. So what this means, I mean, what happens here really is we start disassociating the meaning of the marital act, right? The unitive from the procreative meaning of the marital act has changed. This disassociation of the two sets the groundwork for the redefinition of marriage. And marriage, nobody ever sat down and really wrote up a new definition. It really is the way we start to think about it as a society that's happened. And so when the procreative aspect of the marital act has now been set aside as something integral to the meaning of marriage, then marriage has been cut free from its natural origin, and it's free to be redefined, re-understood in a variety of different ways. This is really what ends up allowing in the United States the changes that will come about when artificial contraception becomes available. I'm talking about primarily a progesterone pill in the early 1960s, and it becomes widely available. This is really, I think, one of the things that not only, I would say, perhaps makes much more broad influence on the way that marriage is viewed in the world, or within the United States, but it also set up sociologically the problems that would cause more selfishness within marriage, and marriage to start falling apart. In fact, if you look at the sociologists that look at marriage, they say that it was the 1960s that the nuclear family, the traditional family, or what we would say the natural, the real family, entered into what they would call free fall. Right? It basically starts to just completely disassociate. And so it's not surprising that by the end of the 60s, the early 70s, we see a broad movement towards what we in different states, and they happen very quickly, towards no-fault divorce, right? And so now today, marriage primarily, if you ask the average person, I would say today the average person, if you think about marriage, they are asking what they think marriage is. It really is, for most people, an institution that's about personal self-fulfillment. It's really inward turn, which really turns on top of its head, right? The real meaning of marriage. And so that's the situation that we are today. If it is about personal fulfillment, we can see now, and if that's the assumption of what it is, we can see how, if that's the unstated premise, right, that everybody is assuming, we can see how the arguments about so-called same-sex marriage really make sense and seem very difficult to argue against, because the premise, the unstated premise, the unexamined presupposition allows that to make sense. It allows that to make sense. And so we have to get back to these principles and re-examine the principles and see if they are real principles.
Wow, that's amazing. Yes, it's so true. We're going to go to a break, but we're going to be right back in just a minute. And if you have any calls or any questions for Doctor, call 888-880-8563. We'll be back in just a minute.
Just to tell you that I love you isn't what you need to hear right now. Words only last as long as we're talking, but you drifted away somehow.
Mr. Miyagi, what are you going to do with all these cars?
I no keep. Give all car to GRN.
Are you going to drive them all there?
I stay here. They pick up. All Miyagi do. Call 888-636-6422 or go to grnonline.com and click donation charity. Here in heart, not here in head.
This is Monsignor John Kozar, National Director of the Pontifical Mission Societies in the United States.
What's the measure of God's love in your life? For the poor in the missions, it's found not in any material possession or personal achievement. They feel love because God gave them, as He gave us, His only Son, Jesus. On so many visits to the missions, I've seen the great joy of our mission family, most especially during Mass. As they receive the body and blood of our Lord, they feel blessed and rich beyond all measure. What a precious gift is our faith. How much God loves us indeed. It's a lesson from the missions.
Brought to you by the Pontifical Mission Societies. To learn more about becoming a missionary right where you are, visit our website at onefamilyinmission.org. Remember, if you're baptized, you're a missionary. Through prayer and sacrifice, in word and witness, we're all part of this one family in mission.
And we're back, and you are listening to A Good Habit. And we are the Texas Nuns, and in the studio with us today is Dr. David Delaney, and he is talking. We're talking about, marriage, the definition of marriage, and the critical times we're in, really, with that. And I just want to say, if you have any questions for Dr. Delaney about this, give us a call at 888-880-8563. And I'll say it one more time, 888-880-8563, or you can email.
You can email us agoodhabit@texasnuns.com. And I was just going to say, we're trying to pack a lot into this show, and I'm sure we're not going to get to all of it. So, there's the forum that Doctor will be hosting next week with Mike Dunnigan from the St. Joseph Foundation. We'll be able to go into this a lot deeper. Yep. So it'd be great if, all of you could attend if you're in the area.
And will you put that on your show notes today?
Yes, it's going to be on the blog. We're going to put it on the blog.
So you'll be able to go there and get...
She's
That's
committed
right.
to doing it. So.
Yes, and at the forum there will actually be opportunity to ask questions. We will be taking questions from the audience.
That's going to be marvelous, really. I mean, my goodness, we need more of these. And I know with you and not Dr. Dunnigan, Mike...
We could call him a doctor. He has his JD.
Oh, he does. Okay.
Normally we don't call lawyers who have JDs doctors for some reason, but a doctor of jurisprudence is a doctor, and I keep pushing on this. He's trying to finish up his doctorate in canon law as well.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So it's going to be wonderful. So I mean, if you can get out there, all of you are listening. And to go to this forum, it would be marvelous, and I think you get a lot out of it. So
where are we? Because I have a question.
Go ahead. Ask a question.
All right. Well, again, we can go to this forum and we can listen to you talk about all of this and the history and how we got here, and all of it's very interesting. And a little scary, a little frightening too. But I mean, I've got twofold question. But the first would be, I always kind of, you're talking about all these brilliant people who write all these, have all these doctors and stuff. But I'm just going to ask a simple question: what do the people who want to redefine traditional marriage have to gain by redefining it? I can't wrap my head around what are they going to gain if anybody can marry anything or anybody?
Mm-hmm. Okay. You said two-part. Do you want to ask the second, or you want me to try to do the first and then?
No, you go ahead on that one because I wrote this down somewhere.
I think it's that paper over there.
I know, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very difficult question because I think in some ways not everybody understands what it is that they are aiming for. I mean, if we talk about the fact that there is an element of spiritual warfare, I don't know that everybody actually knows where it is that they're going. There are, though, a number that do. Ultimately, there are those who suffer from same-sex attraction disorder have, we'll say it's been defined before the DSM, right? The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, right, of mental disorders. That is what the American Psychiatric Association puts together. That really tells you what, in diagnosing psychological disorders, really these are the symptoms associated with it, and this is what it is. In the early 1970s, there was it really was kind of a community organizing approach that was used by a number in that movement that tried to really bully the APA, and ultimately they did succeed in having same-sex attraction disorder removed. Before that, though, it was identified as an affective disorder, an affects. The affects are the things that we would consider, affects are like the emotions and the appetites. But it was seen as an emotional disorder, and one of the things that they identified associated with it was the lack of the ability to mature, right? And so same-sex attraction disorder really, if one can't, we are created in the image of God as male and female. And so somehow as male and female, we reflect God's image. That really, if you really wanted to undermine humanity, allowing you to be confused about who you are and how you reflect God's image would be a central aspect. This is really where we are going.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
This is what those who, this really is what Satan wants us to do. God is about communion. God is a communion in himself. We're created after that image. We're created for a communion of love with one another. So alienation of individuals from one another really is the satanic goal. And what better way to do that than to alienate a person from themselves? And this is something that we have to, I think, really have a lot of compassion for those who suffer from this disorder, because it is a self-alienation. One can't integrate around themselves. When somebody is continually living in this life of stress, right, of where you're not at home in who you are and what you are, you need, as we all recognize, right, there's this need for affirmation that we're okay. When we know, especially when we know that we're not. If we remember when we were children, I'm sure hopefully none of us do this anymore, but when we are in the wrong, we are always trying to associate people with us to reaffirm us that we are not, that we're in the right for some reason. That's part of who we are as human beings. We need this communion with one another, and we need to be reaffirmed in who it is that we are. So I would say the majority who are in the, that are promoting same-sex attraction or so-called same-sex marriage really are those who need this affirmation, right? They need this continual affirmation. It's not, and they didn't, at least they didn't admit, but I don't think they even recognized, first of all, this movement, which also started in the 70s, a political and a social movement after they were able to have the DSM, or that removed, as a disorder from the DSM. They now were able to start promoting this as a matter of rights, using the civil rights approach, because it now no longer was seen as a disorder. And first, it was just wanting not to be, condemned. Right. And then it was, just wanting to be, left alone. And then it was, well, we want to be affirmed, right? But it will continue to go further.
Which is already threatening religious freedom. You see that happening.
That's the linchpin, right? Because if it has to be affirmed, the purpose of government is social harmony, social order. They promote institutions that are goods for social harmony and for social order. This is one of the things that we learn from the civil rights movement as well, in that those who reject the authentic rights of others are threats to social order and to social harmony. So one will not. There really is no middle ground here, right? You either will have to affirm it or you will have to reject your faith. This will ultimately be the where we'll be left or end up with. So we are reaching a critical time in that regard. But the majority, I think, of those that are promoting it are either those who see it as a right that that they need to be affirmed. There are others, though, in the movement that recognize that it goes much further. There are those who that are activists and advocates within the order who actually come out and say that same-sex marriage is not really their end goal. They already recognize it. They see marriage itself, just in any institution that's called marriage, as a threat to their anybody's ability to identify themselves. And so their goal with same-sex marriage, and they recognize that because same-sex marriage has diluted any potential meaning of it, will dilute any potential meaning of it, is that they expect that the institution itself will collapse.
Which I think that's an excellent point, because that's what I was going to ask you. Well, that's not the second question I had, but that I know plenty of folks who identify themselves as, having same-sex attraction, but they're not interested in changing what traditional marriage is. They have a respect for marriage. You saw it really boldly in France. So it's like, that's what makes me kind of sad. And I kind of forget that I'm on the radio when I have these conversations, because it's like some of those people will be the ones that will actually be hurt in all of this, because it's not them always that are after this. That how do you say, like, how
like they kind of get swept along with the tide, but they're not
necessarily and they're like, as if
them.
Everybody wants to take care of them and see that they get their rights and all this, but really it affects them as much as it affects a person in traditional marriage as well.
No, that's right. There are many within the movement that wanted to promote its acceptance that are really in many ways even vehemently against this, because they recognize the importance of the institution of marriage for a healthy society, because it doesn't take a lot of thinking about it to recognize how the part that it plays and the importance of it. But the problem, the problem is that because it is within, it's been framed within the civil rights framework. Okay. It's something that, and the definition has been so diluted in our minds. This is the direction that it's going, and there really is not, even those that it will even get beyond the ability of those who are promoting it to do anything to stop it very soon. But I think that it is true in many regards that that those who are who suffer from it, that really don't, this disorder really don't want it. We see it really in many of these countries where civil unions really have been available since the early 70s. And marriage, so-called marriage, for at least 10 or 15 years. And the percentages, I will say the percentages of people actually getting married have fallen dramatically in those societies as well. But those that take advantage of it, of same-sex attraction disorder community that take advantage of the opportunity to marry is very, very minuscule. I'm not sure if it's more than 1% or so.
Okay.
You had another question, sister, but I tell you what, we're going to go for a quick break, and then you can ask that question when we get back.
I'm like the call-in.
Yeah, you like the call-in because nobody's calling in. We'll be right back in just a minute.
Guadalupe Radio Network wants you to know
man is by nature and vocation a religious being. Coming from God, going toward God, man lives a fully human life only if he freely lives by his bond with God. The Church teaches that the one true God, our Creator and Lord, can be known with certainty from His works by the natural light of human reason. By love, God has revealed Himself and given Himself to man. He has thus provided the definitive, superabundant answer to the questions that man asks himself about the meaning and purpose of his life. Paragraphs 44, 47, and 68 in the Catechism.
Read and learn more today in the Catechism of the Catholic Church.
I was raised a Catholic and went to church every Sunday faithfully. I met a boy and he was non-Catholic, so I left the church to be with him. When I was away from church, I yearned to be home. What brought me back was my longing for the Eucharist. The Eucharist fills me with the spirit that you can't find anywhere else. I have a peace when I walk through the doors of the Catholic Church, like that's where I belong.
We invite you to take another look at the Catholic Church. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org today.
And we're back. And you're listening to A Good Habit with the Texas Nuns, and we have Dr. David Delaney on, and we're talking about marriage. And sister, you had a quick question, didn't you? Or I don't know how quick it was, but you had a question.
I have a quick question, but I'm going to quick
It
answer.
might not be quick.
I'm just going to read the title of your forum, and it says, "Is there still a case for traditional marriage?" So that's actually not my question, but my question, I kind of shared it with him on the break just to see if it was something that could get across in the next couple of minutes. But, what would we say to somebody who takes that attitude of what business is of mine if somebody wants to marry somebody they love? Because that's the idea of, well, so-and-so loves their Chihuahua, so they should be able to marry that Chihuahua,
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to ridiculous.
Right. I mean, it's so
where,
silly you can't actually believe that we're talking about it, but
True.
we actually are talking about it. That's actually what's happening.
No, you're right. People may think the average person who listens to that, that example of where one is going, might dismiss it as ridiculous. But of course, the same idea was dismissed as ridiculous of so-called same-sex marriage only 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Even those who are promoting it vehemently today were able to dismiss it as as something that was not in accord with the meaning of marriage. So the importance of it. The importance of it for anybody who takes their faith seriously, I suppose, already knows that, right? Because you will be coerced into not just actively supporting it in a variety of different ways in the future. But the other thing that does affect everybody is that, first of all, we have to understand the importance of marriage and family to the health of society. Mm-hmm. Right? Marriage and family isn't something that human beings came up with. As we already said, that it has its foundation in the Trinity. And because it does, it's the manifestation of the way that we are to love one another. And sexual complementarity shows us that there's something unique about it, right? Mm-hmm. Not to be too indelicate, but the very meaning, really, of what it is that define us, that distinguish us as male and female, means to generate, right? They really have masculinity and femininity have no meaning except in the face of one another. The very meaning of the sexual organs have no real meaning except in the face of one another, right? Mm-hmm. So we can see in this regard that there is it's not just simple biology. It basically is a manifestation of really who it is we are. We have the capacity as human beings, through acts of total self-gift, out of love, to give ourselves to one another. This is really what the human person is made for, is for love. The family is the incubator for a child, for the nurturing of a child in relationships. Really, relationship is the foundation of what it means to be a human person. Now, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we can see that Maslow, the atheist sociologist, thought that relationships were kind of down on this hierarchy of what is really important for human beings. At the top, of course, was breathing, and then eating and procreation, right? Those really, if we think about it, when we have difficulties with our relationships, we turn that hierarchy, that thing up on its head, right? Yeah. No longer we don't even care about eating, even breathing, when we lose somebody that is very close to us, right? So without an authentic marriage, the children cannot be developed in healthy relationships. Children need to be able to have authentic same-sex and opposite-sex relationships that are not genital, right? They need to be affirmed as who they are as persons and learn how to interact with one another. And the sociology is quite clear. Mm-hmm. The sociological evidence is quite clear. Children who are not raised in a family with the biological mother and father present suffer a variety of ailments, and most of them have to do with the inability to relate with one another and to be able to love. This, without healthy individuals, without healthy marriages, without healthy families, we will not have healthy societies. Right. And this is what we are starting to see. So the society is starting to crumble. We wonder if, all of these school shootings, for example, that we're starting to see, is that always happened? No, it's not. Yeah. This is indicative of a society that's crumbling.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, isn't it?
So go ahead.
No, after you.
My only point was, so if you're interested in living in a peaceful, healthy, flourishing society, then you are interested in the authentic meaning of marriage.
And even in evangelizing, the new evangelization, marriage, the relevance of marriage in that.
Yes, exactly. Without the new evangelization, which, by the way, is the the purpose of my apostolate, the Mother of the Americas Institute, right? It will go no place without healthy marriages, without healthy families, without healthy individuals. The church depends upon healthy marriages. This is the first place, not just of nurturing a child with regard to character, but also with regard to their faith. Right? Where do vocations come from?
Right.
Where will anything that we depend upon come from if we don't have children that are nurtured? Some people think the state will have to start raising children, but that's been tried and failed miserably in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just look at the nanny state and all of that.
The state they not only have to raise the children, they have to take care of us also for the rest of our lives.
Right.
Well, do you remember what it takes a village to?
Right.
I'm not going to repeat who said that, but I mean, it's pretty scary. So.
Well, okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I get caught on these things, but I started to look for. We only have 2 minutes left, but the major headlines of the news is that that Nancy Pelosi, House Minority Leader, Miss Nancy Pelosi, is kind of given San Francisco Bishop. Is it Salvatore
Cordileone? Yes.
So, there's, I don't know, did we mention on the beginning of the show about the 2 marches? So there's 2 marches happening on the East Coast and the West Coast.
One in San Francisco.
Yeah, so I don't know much about it, but I suppose they're going to be pro-traditional marriage. And so I'm pretty sure that she made some kind of comment. I was trying to look for a direct quote because I don't want to get into any trouble, but you can probably find it in any news outlet. But that she basically is saying that, the church is distorting, saying that it's venom and it's under the guise of virtue. And so I think that those words, especially coming from a Catholic, a so-called Catholic, it's really frightening. And that's where we are, where you've got somebody who's so high profile, who's sort of almost, we got to go, but just almost really encouraging more hate.
Right.
And so I just want to leave with that, I suppose. But
right.
Yeah. So we have to pray. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, all we can say is that that's one of the things that is going to keep us from being able to overcome this. This is kind of the momentum, and it really is it's primarily focused at a constituency, that type of language, but it indicates to us the difficulties that we have in overcoming.
Yeah. Well, if you want to hear more, I mean, you've already heard such wonderful stuff from Dr. Delaney. So if you want more of this, go to the forum, which is next Wednesday, the 25th, and it's going to be at St. Anthony Hall, Our Lady of the Atonement Catholic Church, and that is 15415 Red Robin Road, and it's going to be at 7 o'clock, so tune in. Thank you so much for coming on. We always love having you on, Doctor.
Well, thank you.
And we'll see you next week, or we won't see you, but you'll hear from us. And tune in next week, same place, same time. God bless you all. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to A Good Habit. Join us again next week, right here on the Guadalupe Radio Network, your Catholic radio station. Radio for your soul.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. Justina Pelletier is going home to her parents after a lengthy legal battle with the state of Massachusetts. The story is important from a pro-life perspective because Justina was kept from her parents because of a feud between doctors who accurately diagnosed her need for admittedly expensive treatment and doctors who may have been looking for streamlined efficiencies by simply declaring that large numbers of these conditions, including Justina's, were merely psychosomatic and not real. Now that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has publicly condemned Sudan's conviction and imprisonment of Miriam Ibrahim, pro-life activists are taking credit as hundreds of thousands of people are publicly demanding that she be released. One petition started by LifeNews.com has garnered nearly 400,000 signatures. This is Life News Radio. Anytime Christians have made a difference in the world, it has been through prayer and even fasting. I suppose we could wait for the invitation to such prayer that overt persecution might offer, but wouldn't that simply be selfish? If you could ask babies whose numbers are greatly reduced by abortion, they'd say the persecution has begun. Pray, and maybe even give up some food to bring a culture of life. 1/3 of Americans of childbearing age in America over the last 40 years have had abortions. This amounts to 50 million American men would-be fathers to the aborted because of legal abortions. An op-ed piece at lifenews.com highlights a study of men whose partners had abortions, which found that only 1% of such men would consider abortion again. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Called to a life of silence, solitude, prayer, and penance, the hermits of the Mount Carmel Hermitage in Cristobal, Texas, support their way of life through their kitchen, working many hours by prayerfully and humbly baking many different products to sell, which include jellies, fudge, bread loaf, biscotti, chocolate-covered nuts, and more. To order and help support their special way of life, simply log on to CarmeliteHermits.org and click on Online Store. May God abundantly bless you.
Strengthen your Catholic faith daily by listening to the station that carries the fullness of.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to this podcast on the Guadalupe Radio Network website. In order to continue offering this and other services to you, we need your support. Please prayerfully consider being a Guadalupe Radio Network financial supporter by clicking on the